Yeah, and I like the idea of going back to a movie of that era. Let's scrap the Back to the Future idea. I'm going to pitch this to you. I want to know if I can survive the greatest film ever made, which is Rocky IV. I want to know whether I can survive training in a Russian winter up in the hills, and whether I could survive getting punched in the face by Ivan Drago.
So is Rocky V the one with the robot?
Or Rocky IV. Yeah, Rocky IV.
Okay, Rocky V is the one with the kid that he starts training.
Yes.
Yeah, Tommy Gunn.
Yeah, Tommy Gunn. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Rocky IV, because in Rocky III is when, spoiler alert, Apollo Creed dies.
No.
That's 2.
No, that's 4. Ivan Drago kills.
Oh, he kills him in 4,
Apollo Creed
and that's why he starts
at the
training.
beginning.
And then goes to
that's
fight
when Rocky comes back, to like get his revenge.
Then what happens in 2 and 3?
He defeats Apollo in 2 because he loses in 1. And then in 3, for some reason, he boxes Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T, and also wrestles Thunderlips, played by Hulk. I didn't know we were going to get so deep into the Rockies, but he wrestles Hulk Hogan for charity, who goes by the name Thunderlips.
Of course.
And that was like Hulk Hogan's big cultural mainstream coming out, was being in that movie.
What was the Hulk Hogan movie with him and Christopher Lloyd where Hulk Hogan is like a space warrior?
Suburban Commando.
I love Suburban Commando. Yeah. That movie is so good. And then what was the other one he was in? Mr. Nanny or something? Or?
The other one, Hulk Hogan has a what is the word? Ouvre? What is the
Ouvre?
Ouvre of he has a deep catalog. Yes, there was Mr. Nanny. There was No Holds Barred, which has the famous, well, actually, it's not famous. I don't think anyone remembers this other than me. Moment where he threatens a man. He's trying to get information out of him. And all of a sudden, Hulk Hogan smells something. And he says, what's that smell? And the guy goes, duty. That's real. You can look. I hope that's on YouTube. But
do you have all of these on VHS?
Just burned into my mind, unfortunately.
You got to keep them up in the old hard drive, huh?
And Hulk Hogan was also in Gremlins 2.
Oh, Gremlins 2 is
the new batch?
Phenomenal. That's a phenomenal. Actually, both Gremlins are great, but Gremlins
2. 1 is such an interesting film because I strongly believe, and someone fact check this, that Steven Spielberg directed the first half of that movie. And then Joe Dante was like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to direct it. Okay, here I go. And then it turns into like a cartoon, the second half, and that's Joe Dante. And then Joe Dante obviously directed the second one where the whole movie is a cartoon.
So if you're choosing future editions of Can You Survive the Movies, would something like Gremlins be a candidate? Or like, how would you choose the sort of projects that you would analyze next?
I think it just depends on what could I talk about. Gremlins, I would love to do. I don't know if there's enough there really, besides like the history of Gremlins. But I can tell you like some of the ones that I pitched for if this goes to series, some of the episodes I pitched for the first season are things like Back to the Future, Blade Runner, Indiana Jones, Men in Black, because there's a new one coming out, Avengers, what's the Fast and Furious, and Alien, stuff like that. Stuff where there's actually like topics that I think I could talk about. Like Halloween, I really want to do a slasher themed episode. I think it would be wonderful. Like shoot it on 8mm. So I don't know.
With that,
there's all the things I want.
You could get really deep into like pretty graphic stuff with the science of slashers, because I mean, especially like the Friday the 13th franchise, the entire purpose of those movies is the different kills. Right? So you could go through and say, like, could you actually like impale somebody, through a bed?
Well, there's a bunch that I want, like, because these killers, like Michael Myers, not in the first movie, but like later on, as they become more of these supernatural things, they have just immense strength. So one thing I want to talk about is like, could you actually punch through a person? Could you do that? And like one thing I also want to talk about is like blood splatter, because that tells you so much. You can like see blood splatter and determine if that was a knife wound, if that was a blunt object, if that was a gunshot. And like we do these experiments, like shoot a gun at a human body filled with blood bags, and be like, okay, what do these blood splatters tell us? Like go through all that stuff. And what is like the science of fear? And also like, how do they move so quickly yet walk so slow? They always are walking, yet they catch up to people immediately.
Because they always
Like,
fall
there's all
down
this-
in the woods and twist their ankle.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, but they still move. So I don't know. There's so much stuff I want to talk about that I think would be very interesting. Like, how much damage can a human body take before it's just done? You know, in the first Halloween movie, Michael Myers gets shot out of a window, and then they look back out the window and he's gone. Like, okay, could that actually be possible? You fall out a 2-story window with like 2 gunshot wounds in your body? You just gonna be like walking it off?
I don't know about the gunshot wounds, but Mike Birbiglia did a whole. Do you know the comedian Mike Birbiglia? So he has some sleep disorder where he like fell out of a 2-story window while he was sleeping at some point. And he did a whole documentary talking about this.
Must not have killed him.
No, he's fine. So
The
if he had the
resilience.
gunshot wounds, that would have probably been a lot more painful and difficult to survive. But
Yeah, the resilience of the human body would be.
well, people
A
fall out
fascinating
of airplanes, right? And their
Yeah.
parachutes don't open.
Yeah, it
and they
happens.
somehow survive that, which I
Uh-huh.
don't understand. Maybe,
Yeah, but that's not like a very common thing.
but it happens, and that's the point.
Like, you shouldn't fall out of an airplane and not open your parachute.
You shouldn't.
That's my disclaimer.
No one should.
Kevin's was don't invite strangers to your home to play Xbox. Mine is don't fall out of an airplane without opening your
to
parachute.
see what happens.
This
yeah.
came up
Yeah.
for something Vsauce related a month or two ago, and I forget what it was. I can't recall at all. But it was about the guy who I think he was in a train explosion of some sort, and a piece of rebar, some kind of spike, went entirely through his head.
Oh yeah, I saw the X-rays of that.
Yeah. This was a seminal case in maybe 1870 or 1880, something like that, where he lived. He was completely fine. His personality changed a little bit. And this was the seminal case of realizing medically that traumatic brain injury is a thing, and what the effects of that are 20, 30 years later. Everybody knows what happens when you really get mashed up from the beginning. But what about when you're okay?
How did his personality change? Just really grumpy because he has a bar sticking through his head.
Yeah, I think that over time he got
He had trouble walking through doors.
he lost patience with things. He got angry quickly. Was generally unhappy. But that was
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that was a
He has a
foundational
bar
thing.
through his head.
right. But anyway, that kind of resilience, like that's really fascinating. And with all the crazy things that we see in movies, the medical element, like you're talking about, the forensics analysis of blood splatters, that's a certainly legitimate, real thing that happens in court cases every day. But seeing the way it's applied to movies, this is incredible. Like I would watch bad movies if I could just watch the analysis of those bad movies.
And when it comes to fighting, I really want to make, maybe in season 2, if we even make it to season 1, I really want to do a kung fu movie. But like not like a classic kung fu. I want to do more like the Raid style kung fu, where it's like bone crushing, nonstop action, like not very many cuts, where like you feel everything, like that kind of stuff. I really like, and I think it's just so curious and interesting. Because a lot of times, especially in those films like the Raid, those people are actually getting hit. So I just think that's really interesting.
What sort of scientific elements of kung fu fascinate you? Like how you can keep fighting for so long, or how you can.
Yeah, just the amount of like energy it takes, not only physical but mental. I think the impact that a fist can have if basically like thrown the correct way. Because you just have these like boxers who just obviously go for force, but you can cause a lot of damage if you're just very specific about how you use it. I mean, that was the thing that Bruce Lee was always really good at, right? He can move quickly. So the thing is, like, the faster you're kind of moving and the more hits you're throwing, it's not going to be as damaging as just one giant wound up punch, but you're doing it again and again and again and again and again, and you're like wearing it down.
Right.
And it's that quick movement that can actually like snap a bone. Because if you not lightly, but if you like slowly apply force to a bone, it'll take longer to break. But if you can apply that same amount of force quickly to a bone, like the tensile strength, it'll just break it.
Is this like a frog in boiling water situation?
I just think it's something that we need to test.
Yeah, we need to test.
Who's going to punch and who's going to get punched?
So that's like a thing I want to do. I don't know. I got a lot of ideas for things I want to do. I hope I get to make them. So YouTube, if you're listening, please pick up my show. I want to keep making them, and I want to keep making them for free for people. So please help me. Help me, YouTube. You're my only hope.
Princess Roper has made his final plea.